This is an Irreverent podcast. Check out irreverent.fm for shows from all our friends. Hello and welcome to Evangelical, a show exploring the world inside and outside the evangelical subculture. I'm your host, Blake Chastain. My guests this week are the Twisted Sisterds, a podcast that spun out of the Inglorious Bastards podcast. The sisters are Becky, Callie, and Amanda, and they each share parts of their stories. We even get to nerd out a bit at the end. Though because this interview was with 3 people, the runtime is a little longer, but it's totally worth it. You'll want to hear the stories these women have to share. You can catch their show by subscribing to the Inglorious Bastards podcast on iTunes and elsewhere. And speaking of iTunes, why not stop by the iTunes store and rate and review our show? The last one was left in January, and it's getting pretty lonely, and it's a great way to support the show. You can also support the show directly via Patreon for as little as $1 a month. $1 gains you access to the private Facebook group, and there are extra rewards for higher pledges. You can learn more at patreon.com/evangelicalpod. You can follow the show across the web. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter @evangelicalpod, and you can follow me on Twitter @brchastain. I'm going to also include links to all of the Twisted Sisterds social links as well in the show notes. All right, let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome to Evangelical. I'm joined this week by the Twisted Sisterds. They are a podcast that spun out of the Inglorious Bastards podcast, and I'm really happy to have them on the show. First, I have Becky Seville.
Hi.
Callie Adams.
Hi.
And Amanda Carranza. Did I get that right, Amanda?
Yeah, it's actually Amanda Carranza Baloo because I hyphenated, but that's what...
I'm sorry, Carranza Baloo. I apologize. Well, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much.
So let's really just kind of start just to get some background on each of you. Where are all of you from? Do you live in the same area where you grew up, or let's hear a little bit about your backgrounds.
So this is Becky. I live in Oklahoma City now, but I grew up mainly in Seattle, and my family moved down to Dallas when I was 13, and then I came up to Oklahoma City for college. Oh, okay. So I've been in Oklahoma my whole adult life now.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, a lot of people come from the center and then move to the coasts, but
yeah. So I've heard of people talking about that where they're like, well, I lived in the middle of the country, then I went to the coast and I saw a different culture there, and I did exactly the opposite.
Has that been rewarding for you? Do you like that? I'm speaking as someone who's mostly lived in the Midwest their entire life, so. Yeah.
I really love the people in Oklahoma. And it's I guess we'll get into this more later because there's culture issues that I don't quite agree with, but I don't think I could live in Seattle again. People there are okay, but it's just different. Like, I don't know, it's just a different mindset. Here. So I do love it now.
That's good. Amanda, how about you?
So I grew up in I'm sorry.
Oh no, sorry, just kind of where you grew up, where you're living now. That's sort of just getting a sense of where you're from and where you are. So
yeah, no worries. Yeah, I had to change my microphone, but I have on my headphones, so I'm using that now. So hopefully you can still.
Yeah, you're a little quiet, but we can hear you fine. I should probably be able to adjust that.
Okay, sounds good. So yeah, I grew up in Duluth, Minnesota. I wasn't born there. My dad had been transferred to Texas where I was born, so technically born in Texas and a couple years in California, but I don't remember a lot of that. Back to when I was 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then I lived there until I was 8. Iowa for college. I was going through a lot of mental health issues, so I am college for a year. Went back to Minnesota, and then I met my husband Christopher on eHarmony. So I moved back down to Iowa point, I moved here in 2009, and I've been
Oh, okay, yeah. Iowa is I've only been kind of close. I've been to like Galena and then to like Dubuque and that area. But you and
Yeah, that's a gorgeous area.
yeah.
I love that would be like a dream place to live, but it's way too expensive.
And Callie.
Well, I was born on the West Coast, but I've lived in Colorado since I was 8 years old. I live in a small town of about 20,000 people. It's a college town. It really only gets up to 20,000 when the students are here. So in the summer, we go down even smaller than that.
Mm-hmm.
I've been here in Southern Colorado forever. I love it here. It's amazing.
That's great.
I know everybody, and I like it.
That's great. So for each of you, and you can kind of feel free to jump in or what have you, but how did religion and everything factor into your life as you were growing up?
Well, this is Callie. For me, I grew up, I'm a fourth generation church going Christian on both sides of my family. And so I grew up pretty deep in the denomination that I'm in. And I don't know, I've just been in it forever. It's really difficult to even go outside of that because, it's your culture, it's your family, it's all of that. So it's hard to break out.
Yeah. This is Becky. My grandfather, my mother's father, was a Church of Christ minister. And so I started out in the Church of Christ. I don't know how the first time I was in church, but it was probably within my first month of life. I would not be surprised to know that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were in the Church of Christ until I was about 7, when my parents had a kind of a falling out with the pastor, or I'm not completely sure what the situation was, but then we bounced around a little bit, went to Foursquare Church for a few months, and then found the Nazarene Church, when I was about 7 or 8. And I've been in the Nazarene Church ever since, including now. I still am, but I've moved from one Nazarene church to another, and I'm sure I do spoilers, so I'll just keep talking unless someone cuts me off.
No, that's fine.
So the Church of Christ is very, very conservative, and that culture kind of stayed with me for a long time, even after being in the Nazarene church. So some of the mindset did. So that's kind of my church history.
Okay. So getting into sort of denominational weeds here, or denomination corner, whatever you want to call it. So Church of Christ, I am not very familiar with that. Honestly,
Oh, yeah.
I know that United Church of Christ is very liberal, or at least has that. And I'm not sure the relation or if there is one between Church of Christ and UCC.
Okay. So it's not at all the same, I will say. And I'm not sure if this one is there's Church of Christ Anderson and there's Church of Christ something else too. I'm not sure which one this was, but basically they are they call themselves a New Testament church. So if it's not in the New Testament, they're I won't say that they discard it, but they put more emphasis on what's in the New Testament. So because in the New Testament churches, it's not listed that they had musical instruments in their services. They don't have musical instruments in the Church of Christ services. So they do sing, and they sing very well, because when you don't have musical instruments, you just sing a cappella. You learn how to blend together well. But they'll have the song leader who'll be up there with a pitch pipe is the only thing that they allow, just so you can get the right pitch to start. But then after that, it's just a cappella. they are patriarchal too, so women cannot have any authority over or teach men. They can teach children and they can teach other women, but all their pastors are male, and even the music minister is male. Even leading singing is too much authority for a woman to have over a man.
Okay.
So it's not at all like UCC.
Yeah. And then the Nazarene Church, there was only one family that I could remember, and I grew up in a small town in Indiana, and there was one family that I remember, and I can even remember their names. They were the Davenports. They were Nazarene, and primarily the only indicator that I knew of that is that they were conservative Nazarenes because they wore like jean dresses.
Yeah, they were the buns and skirts Nazarenes.
Yeah.
We have a term.
Okay. And that's
I've heard that a lot here too. People who I tell here that I'm a Nazarene, they're like, "Oh, like I dated a guy who's a Nazarene back in high school or this and that." And they're like, "Yeah, his mom had long hair and his sisters and his sisters wore skirts." I'm like, "Yeah." So it's very it's the big tent. So I know that having listened to your podcast, I know a little bit that you were in the Wesleyan church or...
Yeah. So I grew up United Methodist and was really exposed to Wesleyanism and the Wesleyan denomination through my college. So
yeah. Yeah,
that's right.
So you know about the big tent theology where there's a few core things and then we try to include as many people as possible.
Sure.
And so the Nazarene Church, I think, has taken that and run with it.
Yeah.
So each Nazarene church is going to be at a different place on the conservative scale.
Gotcha.
So growing up in Seattle, we went to, my Sunday school teacher took us to movies. And when we moved to Texas, we were told then that Nazarenes don't go to movies. They don't go to dances. And we're like, when did this happen? Because in Washington, that's not how it was at all.
Yeah.
So it really depends on each congregation.
Sure. And the Wesleyan and Methodist traditions have a similar sort of wide array. Like in Wesleyanism, there's actually a term like buns and skirts. It's called the Wesleyan wad, and that's when women don't cut their hair, and it just ends up kind of on a wad on the top of their head. So
fantastic. I really believe that every denomination has a sect of that.
Yeah.
Just because it doesn't matter. I mean, there's I know this is a little bit extreme, but there are Amish and Mennonites who live down here in the valley. And then there's some who are driving in cars and wearing tennis shoes. And there's some who are just not. I mean, even within the really conservative ones, there's such a wide range depending on denomination.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the Amish and Mennonite, my in-laws live near a big group of them, and some of them have, the power lines going to their houses, and some don't. It's wild.
For sure.
It's definitely like a wide diversity of belief out there.
Yeah, it's hard to classify anyone too tightly within their denomination, regardless of what it is, just because of that exact thing.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's why I feel like the podcasts that you and I do are so important, because it gives that space to flesh out those things, which I think is really, this sort of discussion fits this medium perfectly.
Yeah, definitely.
Amanda, how about you? What's your
we kind of lost her
for a moment.
Oh no. Okay. Well,
she's trying to. Skype told her that she had to update, and so apparently that is happening at the moment.
Okay, so it's not
She'll
showing.
Be gone for a little
bit. That's fine. Let's riff.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so from kind of where you grew up, did you both have sort of any exposure to sort of like youth group culture, or those sort of trappings that were really popular in the 90s and 2000s and earlier? And what sort of role did that play in your lives?
I didn't have any youth group down here. The church that I go to has about 35 regular members,
Okay.
and I was the youth when I was a youth. And so there was no camaraderie between me and anybody else because they were all way outside of my age range. However, I did go to a boarding school for high school. So that may or may not. I mean, it's so much different going to a boarding school than it is being in a youth group, because being in a youth group, you go home, you've got your parents, whatever. At a boarding school, all the rules are the same for all of the kids, and you have no parents to supervise you at all. You just have teachers and people who live in the dorm with you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're 14 years old and trying to figure that kind of stuff out, it's interesting. It's very interesting. I think boarding school is a good experience for me. I'm not sure that I would send my kids to boarding school.
Okay. Did that boarding school have like religious teachings, or was it?
Yeah, it was a denominational.
Oh, it was a denominational school.
Yeah.
Okay. So did it, in that sort of environment, did it have some of the things that other people might associate with youth group, like maybe like different exposures to purity culture or being...
Oh, definitely. Definitely. That's one of the episodes that we're hoping to do on Twisted Sisterds, is just to talk about purity culture and how it was presented and how maybe we would like to present it differently in the future, so that it has a different so you don't put so much emphasis on that holy diamond of virginity, and maybe emphasize, emotional relationships a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm the one unmarried sistered, and I'm in my 30s, and it still affects me. So yeah, I definitely remember youth group culture. I now, some of the more horrific things, especially when it comes to purity culture, like the chewed gum and stuff like that didn't happen. But
it did at my high school.
Did it?
they
oh
totally
gosh.
Did that. Oh yeah. And the glass of water that they pass around to everybody.
Well,
man.
that did happen in biology class in high school, though. Like, we did something like that for...
It's a much better biology experiment than it is a Bible class.
Well, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
But,
oh, man.
yeah. Oh, gosh, yeah. I remember thinking that, like... I remember thinking that I wouldn't date anyone unless I was going to marry him. Like, why date someone? Why date a guy if I wasn't going to marry him? And now I'm like, that's just ridiculous. Like, how was that a thing? But I understand parents trying to protect their children, but we need like common sense education, not like oppressive stuff.
Well, but remember, for our parents, that was common sense.
I know, that's true.
The older, you know what I mean? We're actually having to completely re-educate ourselves if we're going to do something different in the future. Which I can't believe I'm getting into this right now. We should save it for our own podcast. we really do. I mean, that was their common sense. That's what they were taught when they were kids. As soon as they kiss someone, they're married to them.
And it probably was just a different, different time period, different opportunities. And I don't know, maybe.
It's a different culture. It was a different culture then, and it's a different culture now.
Yeah.
And we have to be willing to change our teaching and our understanding of culture as we go along. Otherwise, we just... that's part of the reason why it's so difficult to stay in the church, because they change so much slower than the culture. They don't lead the culture. They don't even really follow the culture. They stay so stuck. They're so stuck.
Absolutely.
They hold on to the culture with ropes pulling backward and like trying. Yeah.
They have to be dragged along with the culture, kicking and screaming.
Yeah. That's definitely true. I talked to Stephanie Drury recently, and she wrote a lot of posts for her site, Stuff Christian Culture Likes, years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
She
I
wrote
started
that.
following her on Twitter.
Yeah, she's hilarious and awesome. She used to have this like satire blog that was part of her online, persona and everything. But the thing I told her, and which is totally true, she wrote those years ago, and they're all still true because nothing's changed within evangelicalism,
Yeah.
which I think is it's a completely like valid point you both made. Like the culture just doesn't change. The church culture and the evangelical culture in particular just wants to stay cemented, and that's how they feel. They're being a witness, but but things like this where you are still processing and deconstructing things in your 30s that are relative to this, and I'm positive because it's been 100% this case, and anyone I've talked to about this, that women and girls bore the brunt of that. And it's total bullshit.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
So.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and it still occurs, though I do feel like there is a shift in culture happening, but it still occurs that women and girls are supposed to dress in appropriate ways and are supposed to defer to men, and it's just a load of shit.
Yes, it's totally true. So throughout your youth group and college and everything else, when did each of you really start to become more aware of the sort of environment that you were in, as far as your faith and how that forms your life and how it informs everything? And sometimes I feel like like when you're sort of developing through evangelicalism, and you sometimes feel like you may hit the wall, like in the Truman Show. Like there's like a boundary there that you didn't know was there until you hit it. But was there anything in particular that sort of brought either of you to that point individually, or was it more of a combination of a number of different things?
So for me, nothing happens quickly. Like I don't know if you know anything about the Enneagram, but I'm a 5 on the Enneagram. So a person who likes to research and gain knowledge and just like soak in knowledge before making a decision about anything.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, so I have a degree in biology. So my bachelor's degree is in biology. And in my origins class that I had to take in college, and I went to Nazarene University, and we had the biology major. Well, I was a pre-med major at the time, so biology and chemistry double major.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to take a class called Origins that was essentially about the beginning of the universe and about evolution and all this stuff. And in that class, we had to write a paper, like our final paper, about what our opinion on origins was, like on the origin of everything. And at the time, like my professors were very much into theistic evolution and or evolutionary creationism. There was debate about which way to say it, where the emphasis was, but I think a lot of people know it as theistic evolution. And at the time, I still wasn't quite ready for that, but it did intrigue me. And I wrote my final paper essentially supporting that, saying that that's what I believed. Looking back now, I didn't quite yet believe that. Looking back now, I'm like, it was dishonest, but it was a first step, one of the first steps along the way to where I am now. Beyond that, like, I just think going to other countries. I lived in Kenya for a year as a volunteer missionary, and seeing culture there and seeing how American culture is not the only thing out there, and how American Christianity is tied in with government was not the same situation in other parts of the world. And so I think just little things along the way just kept chipping away at the artifice that I'd built throughout the years, or had been built for me.
Yeah.
In the beginning, man wondered to himself, why, oh why are we here? And yet with each asking of this question, the answer would become even less clear. Overwhelmed by fear, distraction took its place. And so it was in the world's first shelter that we began the human race. The human race to fill up more and more empty space. Oh, how we loved the human race.
Kelly, what about you?
Until one day, this
Well,
one guy
for
said to
me,
this other
most
guy,
of that
he said,
scientific stuff, historical record, all of that, my faith has never hinged on it very much. So if someone had come and told me, well, when someone did tell me that there was no worldwide flood, I was like, interesting. It didn't really bother me very much.
Yeah, you find Kelly is different. It has a much different background than Amanda or me.
Yeah, I've been in the denominational schools. I was a teacher in the denominational schools, but my deconstruction really kind of started when I got married, and I was living with my husband for the first 6 months, and we were fighting about who was going to take out the trash and that kind of stuff. And I went to a counselor by myself, and he basically asked me a lot of questions that brought me around to the realization that I couldn't earn God's love. And then after that, all the other bricks started to come out, because for me, I'm such an achiever, and I felt like I needed to earn my way into heaven and earn God's love. And it just felt, I don't know, I just felt very like I needed to achieve. And all of a sudden I realized I didn't need to achieve. And it was kind of a slow burn for about 11 years. And then last year, it kind of, my sister got cancer, and everything else started kind of falling after that. Prayer has always been one of those things where I was like, why are we praying? I don't even know why we pray. Praying doesn't make any sense. And so really started to deconstruct. Yeah, I just started to deconstruct the idea of prayer. And then I started listening to, I got super frustrated with the construct of the church and that kind of thing. And then started listening to the liturgists, and then it was an explosion. The slow burn stopped there, and it hit the powder keg, and then and now I'm really deep into my deconstruction. Although, fortunately, I've always been an annihilationist, so I think that's what kept me from questioning whether God even exists or not, because I've never questioned whether God exists. I've always known he exists. And I never even questioned that. And I think annihilationism is the only thing that kept me on that.
Oh, okay. So annihilationism being the belief that people that don't turn to God just cease to exist, right? Instead of there being a hell.
There's no eternal conscious hell in my belief system.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's that's very interesting as far as where you began was this coming to terms essentially with God as love instead of God as like a rule or a rule keeper and like a
throwing the stick out because you're never going to measure up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you said, I mean, it was this slow sort of development over time, and then you know, through this series of events, that's when things really just started to, you would say negatively, you would say spiral, or, you know, or, but it's not really necessarily a negative thing. It's not necessarily easy, but it, you know, it's also, it can also be really beneficial.
I would say more lately it's been very difficult because I live in the same town with my family. My husband's been in the denomination his whole life, and so have his parents and all of his brothers and sisters. And so with me saying, Why do we go to church again? I'm not really sure what this is all about anymore.
Why do we have a
That's
pastor?
been yeah, the why do we have a pastor has been really hard, which is difficult because I love my pastor. He's such a nice guy. I just don't know why he's a pastor and not just my friend. It's so terrible. And I feel bad because it's his job, but I'm trying to figure out what exactly is his job. Um, I don't know. There's just so many questions that I have now, and it definitely, I don't always know how to ask those questions without hurting the people who I've grown up with and loved and are in my culture.
Yeah.
I don't know how to ask the questions without being antagonistic.
So
That's extremely difficult.
instead of me asking questions, how about what are some of the questions that you have? Like, could you share some of those and like what sort of questions you're you're running into and how you're trying to process things? Like what questions are coming up for you right now?
Well, I mean, prayer was definitely one of the first deconstruction things that was really antagonistic against, when I say, well, is there really a worldwide flood? They're like, we don't know. It doesn't really matter. And so that's okay. But when I say, why are we claiming this promise so that this person gets healed and they don't get healed? Why do good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people and all of that? When I ask those questions, then that's when I start to get the eyebrow raises from people saying, don't screw with our constructs because we like them and they make us feel all fluffy inside. That's really difficult. So the prayer thing has been very hard. Like, what's the purpose of prayer? What's the purpose? Why do we ask for anything material? Also, one of the things that really bothers anyone who's political, and my family tends to be somewhat political, why do we try to protect our lives so much? Why do we need guns to protect ourselves? If we really truly believe in an afterlife, which we do, even though we're annihilationists, if we're good, we believe in an afterlife. Why are we so stressed out about protecting this ephemeral life? And I don't get lots of answers on that one either. I just get a lot of eyebrows on that one. Why is it so important that I'm in church? Why do we continue to do church the way that we do it? Why are we all sitting in pews watching one person talk to us and we have no conversation? It's just us going, sitting, listening, and then coming home and sleeping the entire day after that, because guess who was teaching in the children's divisions? It was me. And, why are we doing that? I mean, those kinds of questions. Why do we have a pastor? What is the pastor's job? Why do we have a building? Why are we bothering with some of this stuff that's so expensive? I mean, it's really expensive to keep up a building. And my husband's the treasurer, so I know how expensive it is, even in a small town. It's really expensive. And in a denomination that's worldwide, that has a corporate structure, I mean, we sent $100,000 from a church of 35 in 1 year. We sent $100,000 to the big conference. And what did they do with that money? Where did that money go? I want to know why we aren't taking our money and creating free daycares. If we really want people to stop getting abortions, why aren't we creating free daycares so that they can keep their baby?
Yeah.
These are questions that I have, and I get the eyeball. Well, you don't know what the church does for us. No, I don't.
And that's the problem.
Sad. That's really sad. I should know.
Yeah.
I mean, so I have questions that are theological, but I also have questions that are practical. So I don't know.
Those are all
and I don't get a lot of answers.
Right. Yeah. And that's exceedingly frustrating when you're looking people in the eye and asking for those things, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like you have a close-knit community, but you don't have people.
I do. And I really love my community. I love the church members. I love my parents. I love my family. I think they're all great. And I feel like if I ask these questions too much or too strongly, that I'll disconnect myself from them. And that's very difficult.
Mm-hmm. And that fear is sort of in the air right now. I have fear of people being cut out or cutting out other people. I think politically it's just there. fearing that you share something that's too liberal or conservative for one of your friends on Facebook. Like in that creating a rift or whatever.
Right, which is why you do closed Facebook groups.
Right.
I'm just going to throw that out there.
Exactly.
And you make people pay to get into them.
Right. But there's healing there.
Yeah.
And connections like this.
Sure.
Where
absolutely.
this would, like, our podcast would not have happened, and we wouldn't be here talking to you without the Pastor's Pub Facebook group, and that's a place where really we can say anything, so long as it's not attacking someone else in the group.
Mm-hmm.
But we can and ask any question. We've had the whole gamut of questions asked in there. So
Yeah.
Amanda's back.
Amanda, hey.
Yes, I'm back. Finally, I'm on a different computer now that hopefully won't freeze again.
Well, I'm glad to have you back.
Thank you.
Well, we've been talking a little bit about just sort of everyone's backgrounds and the sort of questions that they have that they've sort of struggled with as they've exited evangelicalism, or however you might want to refer to it. So I don't know if you would like to sort of share sort of your religious background, so we have a sense of that, and sort of also where you are now, how you're approaching that part of your life.
Yeah, sure, of course. So the way I kind of look at it is I'm in the midst of deconstruction number 2 in my life, which is kind of like, when I think about it, it's kind of crazy that I'm already at number 2 because I'm only 30. I've been through a lot of stuff in my life, a lot of trauma, a lot of change. So just as far as like unlike Callie and Becky, where your families were very much long standing in the tradition that you started in, my parents both started going to the church that I grew up in when they were in college, because it was actually a new church and they were college students. Well, my mom was, at least. My dad was already out of school. And then that's kind of how they got connected to this church, because it started as like a college Bible study and then became a church of its own. So my mom grew up Lutheran, and her whole side of the family is still Lutheran. My dad is from El Salvador. And he grew up in the small minority of people within El Salvador that are not Catholic. And so when my dad came to the United States as a student, he didn't really have a strong religious background at all. And so neither did my mom, coming from the background that she had. Not that my mom's side of the family isn't very committed to faith. They are, my grandma especially, but just for some reason for my mom, it wasn't really all that important for her. Mm-hmm. So when they joined this church, that was like the first experience for them really finding what they would call like sound biblical teaching. And that's kind of what the entire platform of the church was built on. And so that's what I grew up in once we moved back to Duluth. And it was very formative. There are experiences that I'm very thankful for within that culture, within that church, but it was a cult, to put it bluntly. Looking back on what I was taught, we idolized doctrine. That was the entire point. There was no purpose to the community if we weren't right about God, about the Bible. Like, that was the entire point, even to the level where the pastor would spend entire months on sermon series explaining why all these other people were wrong. And it was even the point where I remember when I was like 12 wondering if there were any other real believers in the world besides us.
Wow.
And I don't know any better way to describe a cult than believing you're the only ones with truth. And so it's not like it was a cult where, like we had to, give all our money to the church, and like women couldn't wear pants, and, it wasn't anything like that. It wasn't what you think of when you think about those like crazy cults that get on the news. But our entire lives were still controlled by what this pastor told us was doctrine. And he was the only one that we could be sure was interpreting the Bible accurately for us. And we couldn't trust our own ability to believe the Bible because, you know, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. And anyone that's listened to our podcast has heard me say that. That's that's the verse I know better than any other verse, even more than John 3:16. Wow. And so that was my first deconstruction, was deconstructing out of that environment. And I almost like deconstructed out of that environment into evangelicalism because we were so fundamentalist and so conservative that even the average evangelical wasn't, you know, a real believer to us. So like getting out of that church and discovering people like Beth Moore and Francine Rivers was liberating for me, because it was the first time I was exposed to women's voices that had strength and power.
Wow.
Outside of just being, you know, a submissive wife. Not that they don't believe that. I mean, I can't speak for them, but that was really, really powerful for me, reading Beth Moore's book, Get Out of That Pit. So within the last couple of years, I've started actually deconstructing my faith, which I didn't really do the first time. And so now I'm asking more questions like, is God really God? Is there a hell? What does it mean to live a life that has meaning? And I actually go to a Quaker meeting now. And the thing that drew me to that was there's no pastor. I don't have anything against people who find, or I don't have anything against the concept of people who do find meaning in a congregation where there's a pastor, as long as it's healthy, of course. It has to be healthy. It can't be, it's not going to be healthy if anybody up front is telling you have to listen to me or you're not going to be pleasing God. But for me, I don't think I could ever be in a church again with a pastor. I've just got way too much baggage, way too much trauma with that. And so that's kind of where I'm at now. I really started the beginning of my faith deconstruction through Gungor. So kind of similar to Callie with the liturgists. But I discovered Gungor first, and I love their music so much. I followed them ever since I first heard Beautiful Things. And then, of course, once I found out that Michael Gungor was doing a podcast, I started listening to that. So then I found Science Mike, and then I started following Science Mike religiously on Twitter. And then when his book came out and he was like retweeting anyone that was interviewing him, I saw the Inglorious Bastards. And I was like, oh, that looks interesting. So I listened to his episode. And then I found out there were 3 ex-pastors in Indiana. And my husband's from Indiana. And so I was like, oh, we have to listen to this. And so I binged their podcast, and I made my husband listen to an episode, and then we both joined the pub. And it's just, that was back in October, late September, early October, I think. So it's just kind of spiraled from there. And 6 months ago, if he told me that I'd be podcasting, that I'd be doing this, that I'd actually have real friends,
yeah,
I would have been like, how? What?
That you would drive for hours and stay in someone's house and she's not even there.
Yeah, I know. That we would drive down and stay in someone's house in Oklahoma City to go to a wedding in Dallas, Texas of people that we'd never met. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
And I don't know if people know that story, but
yeah.
Well, I mean, that sounds like just a harrowing journey that you've been on. I know the journey is like a Christianese thing, but
yeah,
but I mean that life story is, I mean, given what you went through, and the upbringing that you had, and I'm glad that you found something like a Quaker meeting that gives you the space to ask the sort of questions that you need to ask now. Because I think that one of the main things that's so toxic about evangelicalism and fundamentalism is that it makes you doubt yourself and your ability.
Yes.
Yes.
It makes you doubt your ability to interpret on your own, which is ironic given that is precisely what Martin Luther unleashed upon the world with the Reformation.
Right?
Yeah, and so then Protestants, then they go back to like the pastor, or it was a priest at that time with him, but they go back to, the pastor's the one who tells us how to interpret this. Like, what? That's not what he was doing.
Right. And so, I mean, there is, I believe that there's a role for seminary educated people, but that role is not to make another person lesser and to sublimate their will and their understanding and their ability to interpret something, even their understanding of the world. That is,
it's not to be the mediator.
Right.
Like, they're not a mediator between you and God.
Mm-hmm.
That's Jesus. Jesus already did that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're all in this place that you are anything and everything is sort of on the table and up for negotiation. Is that a fair characterization for you, or are there some things that you have that you've carried through your faith journey that you still feel is like a bedrock or something that's steadfast? Is there something?
For me, it's all up in the air. I'm even past where Kelly is, where I'm not even sure if there's a heaven. I'm quite convinced there's not a hell. I'm not even sure if there's a heaven anymore, and I'm okay with that, because I can't prove anything about the afterlife, but I can observe life now, and I can see how I can make life here better for the people I come in contact with, and for myself too. And so I can't control what happens after. All I can control is here, and that's fine with me now. It hasn't always been. Like, I was one of those kids who was afraid of going to hell, and the chick track things. Oh yeah, I remember those growing up. Those are crazy things.
These are disturbing.
Yeah, they are. But I guess even my view of God has changed a lot too. We were just talking about this in the pub today, I think, and my view of God is more of the animating force in the universe that causes life to be and connects all of creation. So more that than a sentient being.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. I mean, I'm pretty much up for a lot of things now.
Yeah, and I think there are Christian rationalizations or like traditions that can even fit that. You know, the new creation being not something that this whole world is being burned down, but actually Jerusalem descends and God comes with us, and that's what happens in Revelation at the very end. It's not, it doesn't all burn. It's actually being redeemed right now. And also,
yes. Yes.
And also that, I mean, someone I'm personally trying to learn more about is Paul Tillich, and he calls God the ground of all being. So,
yes.
So that to me is resonant, but it's something I'm exploring just now.
Yeah.
What about the other two of you? Do you feel like things are just all in the air? Do you have something that's stayed consistent throughout your understanding of your faith?
No, for me, God exists. He's good, and he's in control of the universe, and that's the only thing that matters. Everything else is just about me, which is so selfish sounding. Oh my goodness. But it's all about me. It really is. It's about me being better at relationships. It's about me being a better connector with other human beings. And that's really all it is. Everything else is semantics.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, I'm kind of both and neither, like between Becky and Callie. I guess for me, I spent so much of my childhood and formative years obsessed with the afterlife, obsessed with the rapture, what would happen, and with so much fear, not for myself, because one thing that I was raised to believe is that once you're saved, you're always saved. There's nothing you can do to lose your salvation, even if you were to like walk away completely and live as if you never were a Christian. I was taught to believe that eternal life is eternal life. And so I never had that fear for myself of whether or not I would go to hell. But I did have that fear for my family, for my loved ones, like, and it was really genuine. It was, I mean, I look back now and I can see why my cousins and my aunts and uncles didn't really like me very much as a child. Not that they didn't love me, but I was pretty intense about my evangelism. I remember even praying in front of my grandmother once that she would get saved and not go to hell.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she was very happy. I also told her once that all the people and I mean, she's not Methodist, she's Lutheran, but I remember we drove past the United Methodist Church once, and I told her what I'd been told, that all the people there were going to hell. And so, like, for me, it's just such an ugly part of my background that, and it caused so much harm to my view of God, to my relationships, to how I could, to just my growth as a person, that I don't believe that having an opinion is necessarily beneficial, as far as like whether or not there is a heaven, because that's not the point. The point isn't getting to heaven where you'll have a golden crown and you'll walk on streets of glass and crystal and like, and have a mansion. Like, that's totally skewing the entire purpose of why Christ came, of why there is any reason for faith. It's not about some future up there somewhere away from the trials and tribulations of this world. You just have to make it and bring as many with you as you can, regardless of how you treat them otherwise. It's who are we now? What right. have we been given now? What opportunities do we have in this life here? I mean, and when you read Matthew, I think that is so clear. It's so clear when you read Matthew. But we never read Matthew growing up, because why would you? You have John.
Yeah.
Like, maybe once a year we'd read, the Sermon on the Mount, and that was it. So, like, for me, it's just, I really don't like spending my time thinking about heaven and hell anymore, because when I don't believe in hell anymore. That's completely antithetical to how I now believe in God. And like, I have to believe that God is good, that the divine force of the universe, whatever who he, she, it is, they are good. And if they're not good, I can't accept that. I just can't accept that, because I can't. And I mean, I can't control it either way. If the divine force isn't benevolent, isn't good, then we're all just playing a game that we're all bound to lose anyway. Which I guess it's kind of morbid to think about it like that, but I don't usually think about it like that.
But it's a valid perspective, even though it's a morbid one.
There is some multiverse somewhere where there's a bad God. I'm telling you.
God.
Yeah. I think it's Earth 3. It's Earth 3, if any of you are into DC Comics.
Oh, is it?
That's right.
Earth 3 is where it's Ultraman, which is the evil Superman, etc.
That's right.
Yes.
I just love you so much right now, Mike.
Finally,
I'm big into Star Trek and Stargate.
Okay.
And I love the idea of sentient aliens. Like, I want there to be intelligent life on other planets, like, so badly.
Oh,
There
absolutely.
is, Becky.
For for a lot, especially evangelicals, that would like destroy their view of God. They're like, but wait,
Unless
but
you're Callie.
like it wasn't
right.
just about us. What did you say?
Unless you're
I was-
Callie.
Oh yeah, unless you're Callie, because Callie's whole denomination believes in aliens.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, even probably 5 years ago, like a lot of the change in my beliefs has happened in the last 5 years. I think maybe I did have more of a powder keg thing at the end too. I mean, in the last few years, but it would actually like there being aliens who are rational and have agency and everything would actually increase my view of God, like because I think that God is big enough to support life on other planets too, not just here.
Mhm.
I think it'd be amazing. I think it'd be great.
Yeah. There's a writer that I read in grad school that you may be interested in. Her name is Sally McFaig.
Okay.
And she writes a lot about what like what might be called like creation care, that sort of stuff. But in one of her
Yeah.
in one of her later books, she just kind of says in like a throwaway line, but basically it's like, yeah, I'm pantheist now. Like, I believe
Yeah.
that God's life is just like in everything and everywhere. And
Yeah.
so,
Yes. Oh my gosh, I would love that because that's pretty much where I am too.
yeah. So it's I'll send you some links separately, but because
That'd be amazing.
I can't think of the name of it, but I think she's either pantheist or panentheist, which is
Right.
like there's a slight difference there. But anyways,
Yeah.
And Becky, you're a panentheist, right?
Panentheist. Yeah. Yeah.
panentheist, yes,
So-
it's an important distinction. But
It is. It's just hard to describe the difference, but it is. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yep.
since all of you at different points, two of you have mentioned that you've had these sort of powder keg things, and then Amanda, you've gone through two different cycles of this, working through your recent history and everything. In light of all of that, I definitely want to ask all of you how you're processing just the complete upheaval that we're seeing politically and culturally as a result of the election, and sort of all the nastiness that we're seeing, especially in the name of evangelicalism. And it's been definitely extremely disheartening from my perspective. Today, we're recording this the Monday after the Muslim ban.
Yeah.
And PRRI just did a study or a poll, and 2/3 of evangelicals support the Muslim ban, and that sort of stuff
So disgraceful.
brings a lot.
It is.
But so this is where I'm sure you may have noticed in some of my other episodes, like if I get carried away with a thought or I start thinking about something, I start to stammer, which is not great for an audio show, but it happens.
I say so, like
yeah, all those
all
things,
kinds of things.
all those things.
All the things.
Anyways, how does all of that sort of factor in for all of you when you're going through all these other things? You're processing whether the value and role of a pastor, all these other things that come into the political and gender and social and like sexual identity and all these other things, because of the way evangelicalism teaches us, it's kind of all or nothing. You have a way to live, but then you sort of discover that there's all these other ways to live too. So
So I have an interesting story. I was on an airplane yesterday and I flew with 3, and we were on like this little 8-seater, and there were 3 girls from LA who were like screenwriters or something. And they're from LA. You know, LA is so far removed from Colorado, and the reality there is so far removed from Colorado. And I'm a conservative. So I'm the most conservative person in the pub, I think. And
probably, yeah.
Yeah, I think definitely. But for me, with all of this stuff that we have been going through, it is sad to see us yell at each other and hurl Bible verses at each other to try and convince each other of. And I heard on another podcast, someone was talking about the hurling of Bible verses being like the Fifth Element, where they shoot at the bad black blob and it just eats up the energy and gets bigger and bigger. And that was such a good reference for me because I'm such a nerd. But I was talking to these girls from LA and I was saying, it's more important for us right now to find people we don't agree with and listen to what they have to say and hear their perspective and really try and understand it without trying to convert them.
Yes.
So I have very definite ideas of what I think of all of politics and all this stuff. I listen to certain political commentary, and I read a lot. My dad was a history teacher and a government teacher, and so I already have a lot of those ideals set in my mind. But I also have joined a book club that is all people over 65 who ran the DNC here in town. They were all campaigning for the liberals and the liberal agenda. And I joined their book club and I just listen to what they have to say. And I read the books that they pick because I want to know. I do want to know also the objective. Where are we going? What are we trying to accomplish? And so I don't generally join in on any of the marches or anything like that unless I know the answers, because I have to know the objective and I have to know how to answer questions, because I'm not going to be that person on Jimmy Kimmel who has no idea what they're talking about when the guy comes around. I need to know the answers. And if I know the answers and I agree with where we're headed, I'm in. I want to help, but I have to know the answers first. So that's just my own personal. Right now, for me, it's about listening. It doesn't matter that the conservatives have taken over the government right now. All that matters is that I have friends who are hurting and I want to know why and I want to know how I can help. That's all that matters.
I think for me, and I really agree and appreciate Callie's perspective, because like all 3 of us come from completely different backgrounds as far as what we've experienced in life and where we're at in life and even our political ideas. And it's really good, I think, for there to be examples out there of people who don't agree politically to show that we can have relationships, so we can talk about things, because ultimately it's down to how do we take care of each other. And it really needs to come down even more to just listening. I hurt so much for what is happening though, and I vacillate between some small moments of hope every day and despair, because I just can't believe what's happening in our country. And I personally have known so many people and am related to so many people that have so much at stake. I have family members in the country that are here and they're undocumented from El Salvador. I don't know what's going to happen to them. Because if they get deported, they go back to El Salvador, which is out right now very, very much controlled by the gangs and everything but name in the government. And because the government just doesn't have the power to to do anything about it as much as they try. The gangs have so much power and so much influence, and that if you live in a small town, you're already poor, you already don't have any options, you already probably only have a third grade education, and the government's not going to come help you just because El Salvador is just such a mess. And so there's that reality, and then there's the aspect of I feel so betrayed and confused by the people that I know that left the church with me. Like there was a large group of people where we all left the church around the same time, the church I grew up in, because of the abuse that we were all experiencing in different ways, different forms. And we all healed together and grew together and processed that together. And it was a couple of years where we were family. And I thought it was, and I think it could still be that. But I know almost all of them voted for Trump, and I don't understand it. I don't understand it because I feel like they've gone back to relying on power from a man above, a mediator. They've gone back to that. And it's just like, and like one of them, she's even been like messaging me on Facebook, and I've stopped responding because I don't know how to respond without getting angry. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to get angry. But she's like, she's saying like people just need to get over it, and they just need to move on. They just need to figure out what their priority is, and the priority should be abortion, and they just need to vote for Trump and accept Trump and all that. I'm like, and I just want to tell her, those are the exact same words that people told us when we were leaving the church. They told us, just get over it. This is where God wants you. This is where you're supposed to be. Get over it. It doesn't matter that you're hurt. It doesn't matter that you're being abused. It doesn't matter that you have no freedom. It doesn't matter that what's being done to you is wrong, because we're right, because we have doctrine. Like, that's what we all went through. How can you leave that from a spiritual family standpoint and then abandon that for political power? I don't understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I did participate in the Women's March. Growing up, I was a kid who got taken to the anti-abortion protests, standing on the side of the road with signs and getting flipped off by passing cars. And I mean, I clearly remember that. It was very scandalous because, like, the first time I heard my mom say crap was a big day. Like, we were like, what? Where did my mother go? Like, she never, like, that was swearing to us. So, yeah. And the pastor just had a live recording in Indiana. I guess was it a week ago now? My goodness.
Yeah, I know. Only a week.
Only a week. Wow. And I went to that. I drove 12 hours to go because the pub has become my family. I mean, I still am on good terms with my immediate family, like my sisters and brothers-in-law. I'm good friends with them, and they're all amazing, wonderful people. And kind of half of my mom's family were spread out throughout the country, so we're all very oriented toward our region. So I have family in Oregon and in Washington, and then family in Texas, and they're very much Oregon and Washington, and they're very much Texas. And so, and I'm still mostly, I still consider myself a Washingtonian, even though I've lived in Oklahoma for the longest that I've lived anywhere. And so I had that same thing that you had, Amanda, but it was my cousin who was messaging me about not voting for the baby killer and all these things. And like, I ended up having to block her because she was direct messaging me on Facebook. I'm like, post whatever you want on your page. That's fine. Like on your wall, that's fine. Do whatever you want there, but don't tag me don't direct message me, because that's crossing a line. Like, whatever you want to say, great, but don't include me in it. And that didn't happen. Like, she wouldn't stop. So, but anyway, so I went to the pastor's live, and on, I think the day before, I realized, like, I really wanted to go to the march though. And one of the other ladies in the pub, she posted in the pub saying, hey, does anyone want to go, anyone who's going to be here in Indiana want to go to the Indianapolis March with me? I'm like, I do. I'm glad someone wanted to go. So Jen and I went. It was amazing and great. And I'm now the one who I feel like I need to use my my middle class whiteness privilege that I have to amplify voices that don't have as much privilege as me.
Yeah.
And if I can go out there and march for my LGBT friends, for my African American friends, for my Muslim friends, for whoever does not have as much privilege in this country as I do, then I'm going to do that. And I go out and I march for my nieces who are, like, they have good parents, but as their aunt, my goal is to provide a better future for them.
Mhm.
I think it was only within the last few weeks that I've been able to actually listen to someone who voted for Trump. Like, I just don't even understand the 81% of evangelicals. I don't. Like, it just does, like, if you are voting because of your evangelical beliefs or your Christian beliefs, I just don't see how he was even viable at all.
Yeah.
He wasn't viable. I didn't vote for him either. He's a crazy person.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
Total
exactly.
crazy person.
Yeah. And the thing is, like,
Yeah.
what I'm struggling with now is that I don't believe that this is a Christian nation, and I'm glad that it's not, because I don't want to live in theocracy. I've seen what happens there, and I don't want that. But I'm also, like, find myself going back into the same mindset of, well, yeah, but, like, we can't have so and so as president because that's, like, not Christian. I'm like, well, no, I don't. Like, if I say that, I'm okay with a Hindu being president, or a Buddhist being president, or a Muslim being president, which we haven't had yet, people. But then why would it matter? And
Sure.
so something that I'm struggling with now is reminding myself that my responsibility as a believer, such as I am, is to, or I guess I'll say as a follower of Christ, because I still am that, whether I claim any kind of Orthodox Christianity, I'm still a follower of Christ. Then Christ did not use political power. And my responsibility is not necessarily to use political power to advocate for the oppressed. So this is my struggle currently with all of it.
Yeah.
I'm in a similar place. I just keep coming back to the one of the songs from Gunger's One Wild Life Soul album, the Us for Them, where they're just saying if it's us or them, it's us for them. And then in the wake of the election, so November 8th, I barely got any sleep, and neither did Christopher, and I was crying, Christopher was angry, and then the next day we talked, and we came back to, okay, what do we do now? What does this mean now? What is our action now? Like, obviously we knew we need to give ourselves time to grieve, to process, to try to process the anger, which took longer than I thought it would. But like Becky, I'm at a place now where I no longer feel quite so triggered when I hear pro-Trump opinions. I feel more sad rather than furious now. And just something we keep talking about in the pub is it comes back to love, and we're not going to make it through these next 4 years intact and even safe if we don't learn how to love people that disagree with us. And I believe that applies to people that voted for Trump, of course, but it has to start with me. And so Christopher and I landed on this phrase that we've claimed, and even as so much that we got it tattooed on our arms. Love will be our rebellion. And because that's great. Because we're rebelling against Trump. Don't get us wrong, we're rebelling, but we're not rebelling out of hate. We don't want to. We want to rebel out of love, and that means love for each and every person that we come across, regardless of whether they'll accept our love or not. And we're not going to succeed. I've failed many times already, but that's the goal, and that's the only way we're going to make it.
Yeah. I think, you're all in different places, and come at this from different experiences, but that through line of compassion and love is definitely something that I feel like we all need to have. One thing that I think I shared on my own just personal Facebook shortly after the election is that we're all going to have to have thicker skins and more tender hearts than what to really make it through this, because it feels like an ordeal. It's going to be a 4-year ordeal to get through this. But I think everyone, your listeners and everything are in for a great show to listen through, because you all have such interesting perspectives. And for you all to be coming at this with different takes and different personal experiences, but yet both all advocating to listen and to learn and to love, like those things are all essential to have any sort of progress. So
absolutely.
So it's going to make for a great show for all of you. And to bring it back to the Fifth Element, spoiler.
Absolutely.
The Fifth Element was love. If you remember that movie, that movie, that is the Fifth Element that saves the entire universe. So.
Yes. Yay.
We should all watch The Fifth Element. That's what we should do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree. Especially since I've never seen it before.
Oh my God!
I totally spoiled it for you.
Yes.
It's like on my list. Like, I mean, people have spoiled it for me like long before now because it's been out so long. But like, yeah, I need to see it.
It wasn't me this time though. But,
no.
Your very next chance, you must. You must.
Oh yeah, it's a great movie. So
I've
actually,
never seen The Shining either.
Never seen what? I'm sorry.
The Shining either.
Oh, okay.
That's another one that's like on my have to watch list.
that movie was one of the movies that my wife and I went to one of our first dates on.
Oh really?
Like we were breaking the rule at our Christian college and watched a rated R movie with friends.
Yeah.
Off campus.
Scandalous.
Anyways, so where I actually wanted to sort of wrap things up and end on a higher note is actually to borrow something from your show, which is to talk about things that you're fangirling or about or that you think are are cool that's going on. I one thing that I saw in the news actually that made me think of your show, and also think of a Doctor Who reference is that there's there's a today, or within the last couple of days, Elon Musk, the head of Tesla and SpaceX and everything, launched this dream that he has now to build tunnels under LA. And I guess there's already a hole in the ground. So, but he wants to he wants to build tunnels under LA to alleviate traffic. And there is a great Doctor Who episode where
yes, gridlock.
Yes, that
Oh yes,
where the entire
one of my favorites.
Where everybody lives their entire lives stuck in traffic.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, it's a great episode though. Yeah, it sounds horrible, but it's amazing.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very good episode, and so anyways, that was something that I actually just thought of as I was reading and also listening to one of your shows leading up to our discussion tonight. But how about you guys? Are any of you into anything recently?
Anything that has Jason Momoa in it. Don't tell my husband.
Yeah. I'm with you on that, Kelly. Oh yeah.
It started with Stargate, and then it just went crazy after that.
I didn't even know he was in Stargate.
He was in Stargate Atlantis.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so he's
so not the original, not the original Stargate series.
Movie
well, not
series,
the movie or the original series, but then there was a spin-off called Stargate Atlantis that he was on.
Yeah.
So Aquaman is like a natural progression for him.
Heck
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He's in all kinds of stuff that's cool. Now he's in a Netflix original called Frontier, and oh my gosh, yeah, I'm totally watching
That is in my list. I will have to watch that now.
Tell me what you think, Amanda.
So there's another Netflix series that I just watched recently called The 3%. Have any of you heard of that one? I mean,
No.
Netflix,
Also
it's
in my
Portuguese.
list.
yeah, it's Portuguese.
Portuguese.
It's kind of like it's definitely a dystopia, and it's kind of like the Hunger Games ish. So it's like there's a society called the offshore, where only 3% of people live in a utopia. The other 97% live on land or on the mainland, and they have to compete once they're hit like 18 or 21 to try to become part of the 3%. It's so it's
Kind of sounds like combo of Hunger Games and Elysium.
Yes, I think so. I haven't seen Elysium, but it's very similar. Like the rich live on their own. Yeah.
District 9 is better, but yeah, Elysium's good too.
My brother's married to a Brazilian woman who only speaks Portuguese, so I was watching it in Portuguese. So I'm going to just throw it out there. I didn't catch as much as I probably should have to really understand the plot, but I have seen it.
I'm assuming it has subtitles on Netflix.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Because I speak a little Spanish, but I don't speak Portuguese.
Yeah, you'll catch some of the commonalities between Spanish and Portuguese, but
yeah.
I'm trying to think what I am fangirling about. Like, I finished reading the Harry Potter series for the first time.
What?
Yeah. It was about. It was a few months ago. I think maybe right before we started the podcast, or maybe a little after we started it. Finally read him. Time. Because again, that was one of the things from growing up. Like, it's about magic.
It's a banned book.
Yeah. So and then so it started out with that, and then it was like, oh, those are kids' books, blah 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 blah. So, but so many people who I respect, and I respect their opinion and love it. And so I'm like, okay, I gotta read it. And my nephew was right at the right age, and so he was reading it along with me. And awesome. So we discuss it. Yeah. Though he did read them faster than me because he has more time. But I know, for real. And one thing that really hit home for me was I'm a blood trader. Like I've gotten my DNA tested, and I am very white. It came up as 100% European, and I am a proud blood trader. That's just who I am. So yeah, I don't know. That's probably getting it back into like kind of the sad thing, but I love Harry Potter, so we'll just go with I love Harry Potter.
Didn't you love it how
like
it's okay? The Chronicles of Narnia were okay because, it was C.S. Lewis. And The Lord of the Rings was okay because the author was a friend of C.S. Lewis.
C.S.
But
Lewis,
Harry
right?
Potter was absolutely no Harry Potter.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We watched the BBC.
How many times did you hear it has no redeeming value?
Yes, yeah, exactly. We watched the BBC Chronicles of Narnia growing up all the time.
Yeah.
And the Lord of the Rings movies have the most on-screen deaths of any movie series. Just
oh my gosh, they
Really?
are
Well,
well, yeah, with all the orcs dying.
But
and
they're
everything.
only orcs.
All the orcs,
Calm down.
yeah.
They're not real. They're not real.
That can't happen.
Yeah. Well,
But
there's always an exception for violence, not sexuality, but violence.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, not sexuality and not magic, but violence is cool. Yeah.
You're not allowed to procreate, but
children,
kill all you
it's
want.
Yeah. It could be related to spiritual warfare, which was the thing that was taught at my school.
Even though Tolkien was very clear that he hated allegory.
Yep.
He hated allegory. He was so angry when people tried to apply allegorical meaning to his books. He's like, no. And he was actually really annoyed with Lewis for putting allegory in his books.
That's all Lewis did.
Yeah. Tolkien.
Unless it was nonfiction.
Yeah. Yes. Tolkien was also very obviously they were really good friends, but he was annoyed with the fact that Lewis mixed his mythologies together.
Oh.
That he pulled from different mythologies for his books. Tolkien didn't like that. He's like, no.
Tolkien was on another wavelength. He wrote his own fake language and created a mythology.
Yeah, next level for sure.
Yeah.
I think he technically wrote 3.
Oh.
Did he write 3 languages? Oh my.
Because he did. The Elvish is definitely the one that he expanded upon. That he wrote the most of. Is definitely the most in-depth language. But he wrote rudimentary language for the dwarves and also the tongue of Mordor. The dark tongue, the black tongue. He also wrote that. But that was
Amanda's the biggest nerd.
It's true. Yeah.
Okay, I was part of a Lord of the Rings RPG forum, message board forum for 3 years.
Okay, I've read the Silmarillion, but I haven't gotten that far.
I have not finished the Silmarillion yet, so you got me.
Drag.
I've started it 4 times. I understand.
It's a real drag.
I don't recommend it.
I don't really know why I did it. You read the part about Bren and Luthien and then skip the rest.
Okay.
So.
All right, but that's not actually the thing I'm nerding out about right now. That's just always there. Or it's just always there. It's just part of who I am. If you listen to our first episode, you know that my email is in Elvish. But so right now, what I'm geeking out about is Gilmore Girls, because I never actually made it all the way through the show when it was on TV, and so now that it's on Netflix, I'm watching it again. So I finished the first season, I'm almost on the second season, and now I have to wait for Christopher to catch up, and so he's catching up.
Nice. That's
okay,
good.
I'm just gonna say it, Amanda. Watch Mrs. Kim and see how many times she mentions the Adventists. Someone who was a writer was an Adventist.
That makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Just yeah, I have problems with Mrs. Kim. I understand that she wants to protect Lane, but oh my gosh.
Seriously.
Yeah.
She's crazy.
At some point you have to acknowledge the fact that you've raised a daughter well, and maybe you should trust her if you don't want to lose her completely.
It's a prime example of how not to parent.
Yes. It's amazing Lane is as stable and good as she is.
I will say, though, I don't think this is a spoiler. I think Lane is the most well-adjusted of all of them.
Yeah.
Even with her mother being as just ridiculous as she is. Yeah.
Yes, it's true. Yeah, I mean, Rory has her own issues. And of course,
Mhm.
Lorelai. I mean, I really do love the relationship between Rory and Lorelai, though. And I think a big part of it is just because I really wish I had that kind of relationship with my mom.
Yeah.
And not that there's a lot of history there.
Yeah.
You and me both, girl. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love my mom and I love my dad, but they're divorced and it was very, very ugly. It was bad. And the church only made it worse. Spiritual discipline and all that. And so it's just that's kind of colored my relationship with both of them since then. And like with my dad, it's a lot better just because we've kind of moved on. But I feel like I feel like my mom and I still have some more work to do before we can really move on as far as our relationship together goes. But
I have to say, when my family gets together for Christmas and Thanksgiving, we're very similar. Just all 5 of us are very similar to the Lorelai Rory relationship.
Really?
We talk in movie lines. We all drink massive amounts of coffee.
It's amazing.
We sit around and play games and eat way too much food, and anybody who wants to come and hang out with us can.
That's awesome.
And yeah, it's very similar. I never really watched Gilmore Girls religiously or anything, but I did know that our family was relatively healthy.
Yeah.
Most of the time. I'm going to go with most of the time.
I feel like I have that relationship with my siblings.
Yeah.
Because like my sister and I especially, like the two of us we're super close, even though we're 9 years apart. But it's like it was funny. So like we all live pretty far apart. I'm in Iowa. One of my sisters is in Minnesota with my mom, and then the rest of my family lives in Mexico because my siblings teach at a school there. And not last Christmas, but the Christmas before was like the one time that year where all of us were together, like all of us kids. And it was funny. We were at my aunt's house for Christmas, and I just noticed eventually that me and my siblings, and plus Christopher, because they treat him like a brother too. Like the 6 of us just kind of moved in a pack, like together the whole time.
Nice.
And,
That's cool.
and like we were like, because we hardly ever see each other, and it was just and like the whole family just kind of like moved around us, and not that we weren't interacting with other people, but at one point it almost felt like a Friends episode where you're at a party and they're only talking to each other.
Yeah.
So kind of funny.
Well, I want to thank all of you for joining me tonight. And this was a great conversation. And how can people find your podcast as well as wherever else you might be online?
Yeah, you can find us on the Inglorious Bastards podcast feed. So we are on every other Sunday, and so you just go straight to their feed, and then you'd find the Twisted Sister just within that.
Nice.
And you can find them on iTunes and Podbean and various other locations.
Sure.
And then to get us directly, we are on Twitter at Twisted Sisterds. It's SISTERDS because it's a play off of the Inglorious Bastards.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And then each of us have our own Twitters as well. I'm at Becky Seville.
I'm at Callie Searching.
And I'm at Indwelt Daughter.
Is it Callie Search 79? I think it's Callie
It's Callie Search 79. Yeah.
Yeah.
I keep changing my Twitter. A mistake.
Yep. And then we also have a WordPress site. It's twistedsisters.wordpress.com.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Amanda, Callie, and Becky. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much,
you.
Blake.
Yeah, thanks for having us. This was fun.
Have a good night, Blake.
You too.